only answer to the problem of externality. Absolutely not. There's also private solutions to the problems of externality. So those types of private solutions include the following: moral codes and social sanctions. I don't need government to tell me not to smoke around kids. My moral codes tell me that I should not be doing that. So I don't need anybody else telling me that. Charities is the way to deal with externality problem. Remember, charities on their own don't create positive externalities, but rather charities are the ways to deal with negative externalities. Or we can have contracts between market participants and the affected bystanders. So in that case, we also don't need any outside intervention to solve the problem of externality. So let's see how this last example is going to work. And we're going to use Coase theorem to help us to analyze this kind of contracts. So the Coase theorem, named after its creator, a guy who also received the Nobel Prize for it, said that if property rights are well established and private parties can costlessly bargain, then private market will solve externality problem. So given certain assumptions such as being able to establish property rights and being able to costlessly bargain, we don't need any government intervention. The market will resolve externality problem on its own. So let's look at the example. Dick owns a dog named Spot. Spot's barking disturbs Jane, Dick's neighbor. That's an example of a negative externality. So we as a society is not just interested in the benefit of Jane or benefit of Dick. We want to make sure that our social efficient outcome is going to maximize Dick's and Jane's well-being. Unfortunately, we're not considering the benefit of the dog in this case, but that's a different story. So what does it mean? It means that if Dick values having Spot more than Jane values peace and quiet, the dog should stay. Society wants the dog to stay if the benefit from having a dog is greater than the cost of having a dog. If Jane values quiet place more than Dick values having Spot, then the dog should go. So let's see how these two parties can bargain and come up with a social efficient outcome. So this is what Coase theorem is telling us. Private market will reach the efficient outcome on its own. So let's look at the case 1. Let's assume that Dick has a right to keep Spot. We're establishing property rights. Dick has the right to have a dog. And let's assume that we estimate that the benefit of Dick having Spot is $500 and the cost to Jane to Spot's bargain is $800. How can we put the dollar figure to that? Well, let's say Dick is being more productive because now he has a dog and he's happier, so he's been more productive. As a result, he gets a salary raise equivalent to $500. Jane, on the other hand, does not sleep well, so she's always late to work. As a result, she's losing part of her income, which is equivalent to $800. Since the benefit is lower than the cost, ideally, society would want to see the dog go. So socially efficient outcome, Spot goes bye-bye. So what can we do in order to actually have this situation? Resolve this situation. Remember that Dick has the right to keep Spot. So he doesn't have to do anything. Yet if he keeps the dog, this is not the most efficient outcome. So Jade has to do something in order to convince Dick to get rid of the dog. How can she do it? Well, since benefit to Dick of having a dog is $500, she can offer him something more than $500. How much will she be willing to offer? She has to offer more than 500, but she probably wouldn't offer anything more than 800 because otherwise that she would rather deal with Spot's barking. So Jane is gonna pay Dick something about between $500 and $800 to get rid of Spot, and both Jane and Dick are gonna be better off. Jane is gonna be saving some money, Dick is going to be making some money. So we achieved with our private outcome, socially efficient outcome. What if we're looking at the different situation, at the different scenario? Dig still has the right to keep Spot, but now benefit to Dig of having Spot is $1,000 and cost to Jane of Spot's bargain is $800. Since here the benefit is greater, society wants to see Spot stay. So a socially efficient outcome, dog stays. How can we bargain in this case? Well, there's really not enough money that Jane can offer to Dick to get rid of the dog. But she doesn't have to. Jane is not willing to pay more than $800. Dick is not willing to accept anything less than $1,000. So Spot stays. But that actually is the socially efficient outcome. So without having to bargain, we already reach efficient outcome. Once again, private outcome is equivalent to efficient outcome. Last example. Jane has a right to peace and quiet. Benefit to Dick of having a dog is $800. Cost to Jane is $500. So here we switched the rights. Now Jane has a right to peace and quiet. So now Dick is in a position to make an offer to Jane. Since benefit is greater than the cost, our socially efficient outcome is for dog to stay. So Dick has to convince Jane to let him keep the dog. What is he going to do? He can pay Jane $600 or anything in between $500 and $800 to put up with Spot's bargain. Once again, everybody benefits from it. Once again, we reach private outcome that's exactly the same as socially efficient outcome. Of course, for this theorem to work, several assumptions must be satisfied. Those three assumptions, most specifically. The bargain has to be costless, which is impossible to achieve in many situations. When we start involving lawyers, when we start having large parties involved, the costs change, and as a result, we may not be able to achieve this outcome without having some kind of a government intervention. We also saw from this example that we have a pretty small number of participants. Imagine UCO negotiating with everybody who smokes on campus about quitting smoking. It's going to be very costly and it's going to be very long negotiation, which is not going to work at the end. Also, we have to make sure that the property rights are well established. In each of the scenarios, we knew for sure who has a right to do what. Either Dick had a right to keep the dog, or Jane had a right to peace and quiet. Not all the time that's the case. If any one of these assumptions is not satisfied, then most likely we'll have to have government involvement in order to resolve the externality problem.